Imagine an economy that enables everybody to flourish and thrive. An economy where everybody feels a sense of purpose and where life is deeply meaningful. A well-being economy. I have developed a model that I call the rosegarden economy. And who would be the roses in this economy? Well, that would be all of us. We would also be the gardeners, making sure that the garden thrives. So it would be, the roses would be each and every individual, but it would also be our companies, our NGOs, our institutions of various kinds, and it would be society as a whole. And then the question is, so what does that rose look like? So the rose looks like this. All societies have production of food, shelter, and also means of transaction, or day and age it's called money. All societies have technology, otherwise we couldn't produce the food and shelter. We also have science, and if we don't have that, we have scientific knowledge. Even hunter-gatherers have factual knowledge that helps them survive in their environment. We also have ethics, and then we have narrative and morals. And I differentiate between ethics and morals in the following way. Morals are the moral norms that we have in our society that teaches us and tells us how to behave in familiar situations. Ethics are the principles that can guide us in unfamiliar situations. So we need both. And narrative are the stories that explain or show us, tell us what our moral values are, and they hold us together as a people, as a religious denomination, or if you want to use an academic term, it is the imagined community that is based on a narrative. So we need narratives in order to have thriving societies and in order to make sense of this world, particularly in larger groups. All societies also have aesthetics. We humans need beauty, and we love creating it, and we do not thrive if we are not surrounded by beauty, so we tend to create it. And then, of course, there's power. And that power looks very different in very different societies. And overall, of course, all these domains look very different in different societies. But they're all there if society is to thrive. And if we go back to the hunter-gatherers, for instance, all of these domains are tangled up and mixed in together. It's hard to tell which is what. For instance, the factual knowledge that a tribe can pass on generation after generation is stored in myth. It's stored in narrative. It's stored in ritual, and it's also stored in the aesthetics. And that is how they know when to go hunting for what and when to go finding what kinds of fruits and vegetables in nature. It's also that which tells them how to make different kinds of technology. So all societies have these domains, but of course they look very different. And particularly what is happening is that as societies grow, what happens as societies grow and become more complex is that all these domains specialize. And in production you get artisans, and you get specialized production, you also get specialized technologies. Science sort of crystallizes and becomes a domain of its own, and each of these domains actually becomes a system of its own, or a subsystem with its own narratives and with its own production, with its own technologies, with its own science knowledge, with its own principles and its own aesthetics and source of power. So we have now a system with subsystems in it, and each of these subsystems develop their own institutions and their own rules and their own ways, modes of operation. And where this really happened in Western civilization was particularly with the Renaissance and the Enlightenment, and there actually happened to be almost a hatred among these different domains. I mean, science really had to separate itself forcefully from religion and the narrative in order to find out what is the world really like. What's the world like out there? They had to find an entirely new method of discovering the world and couldn't just go to the Bible. And we know some of the science heroes to be Giordano Bruno and and Galileo, for instance. I mean, they really had to fight for their science and in order to specialize this domain. And this is the process. The domains specialize and diversify, and by that creating a higher degree of complexity. And that is also what the arrows show here. And this is a natural process when societies grow. The hunter-gatherers were maybe 50 to 200 people in a society, and everybody could talk to everybody, and everybody knew everything, sort of. But once you get into the Bronze Age and the Iron Age, where you have tens of thousands of people, maybe hundreds of thousands of people within the same ring-walled city, there is room for and people for and resources for specialization. And one of the specializations was also that they could feed a group of clergy that didn't have to do anything else but take care of contacts to the gods and to consolidate power. They also invented the first branches of science, so to speak. So this is a process that has been going on for like ages, and our societies become more and more complex, and so does every domain. Unfortunately, if they pull too far away from each other, if they specialize too much and don't care about the rest of society, they also all have a downside. Production can become exploitation. I mean, cynicism, slavery, exploitation of nature, destruction of nature. Technology can become disruption, disrupt our society. Science can become arrogant. Ethics, if we have philosophers who start thinking about what should the next kind of ethics be, if that does not match the moral values of society and the educational level in society, that causes anxiety. And narrative, be it religion or national narrative or even a political ideology, can become narrow-mindedness, where you do not allow any other narrative to be out there, and you can only tolerate one narrative. Aesthetics, if the arts become too avant-garde, they can create confusion. And in order to keep society together, in this case, the power has to become even more surveilling, controlling, and abusive in order to keep social calm. So all of these societies have their downside if they don't pay attention to the rest of society, if they don't care about the rest of society. But they also have the opportunity of working together to keep society together and create real value for all of us and create a strong and pleasurable, rich and flourishing rose garden. So if production, that is the green arrow, decides to collaborate with ethics and the philosophers engage with commerce and production together, if they reach over the aisle, so to speak, to the other side of the rose here, they can create sustainable prosperity. If people in technology and people in narrative, be they pastors or imams or rabbis or gurus or whatever they are, strong, charismatic national figures, if they appreciate and understand that technology needs to function along with the rest of society and they collaborate, we can create meaningful and purposeful development. If science, that's the orange arrow, and aesthetics, be it pop culture or avant-garde art, choose to collaborate, we can create deep education or deep understanding or enlightenment, which will give us a society with sustainable prosperity, meaningful and purposeful development, and deep education and understanding and enlightenment. And personally, that's the kind of society I would prefer to live in. So how easy is that? Well, there are some challenges, and as it very often happens to be, money is one of the questions here, because production and technology are where the money is made, literally. Production used to be traded in gold and silver, and that led to the banking industry. So money is literally made in production, but now technology is also beginning to make their own money, cryptocurrencies. So return on investment in financial terms belongs in those two domains in the top of this model, whereas aesthetics, power, science, narrative, and ethics generally tend to be underfunded. And these are what has the white background here in the model is what tells us where we have the conversation about what the world ought to be like. And all of these 7 domains are part of our meaning making. And they need to be balanced in order for us and for society to thrive. So what happens when they're not balanced and, for instance, these 2 take over? Well, the rest is underfunded and weakened and cannot stand up to these 2 very strong domains. And we end up with a very big risk of power becoming controlling and abusive. This can happen in the West. This can happen with the current tech giants taking over more and more power in society, but it could also be China, where it's actually the government, the state, that encourages this production and technology and forgets about the other 4 domains here. Another possibility is that it's religion or ideology that takes over, dominates everything, and becomes the political power. And because they don't allow the other domains to develop, they have to use increased force to keep all the other domains down. This doesn't matter whether it's Jewish fundamentalism, Christian fundamentalism, Muslim fundamentalism, or whatever it is. Whenever the narrative does not allow the rest of society to develop, to become more complex, to diversify, we're going to end up in this situation. So this is the balanced rose. This is the kind of rose we want in our rose garden. And if we look at it not from a societal perspective, but from an individual perspective, the power in the center is our sense of self. It is power over ourselves. And how do we acquire that? Well, we acquire it very much by studying, engaging with these other 6 domains in our surroundings. In the West, we have plenty of public libraries. We have access to YouTube. We have access to various TV channels. There's all kinds of knowledge that we have access to, and we can study production, technology, science, ethics, morals, narrative, and aesthetics as much as we want. And it would give us a lot interesting conversations across dinner tables and in the lunch break at our workplace, in our schools, and everywhere else if we explored more of these domains. So this is, the question now is, how do we direct our society? How do we use the political power that we're a part of to create balance in our economies so that we can have a thriving rose garden economy and a thriving rose garden society where we're all gardeners and where we're all flourishing and thriving roses? So thank you very much.